Hello everyone, how are you? So today we are going to start with module 2 of the part 2 of our module 1. Sorry, that is get started with Azure services. So we finished last time this one, prepare to module to develop AI solution on Azure. This time we are going to start with create and consume Azure AI services, this module. So let's start with this. Yeah, we start with the unit 1. It has to go to introduction. Yeah. So this is your introduction. What is the introduction? It's saying that Azure AI services are cloud-based services that encapsulate AI capabilities rather than a single product. You should think of AI service as a set of individual services. So AI is it is Azure AI is providing us these kind of services, cloud-based services, which can be used. And it's instead of being a single product, we should think of it as individual services that can be used as a building blocks to compose sophisticated and intelligent applications which we want to make. Then it comes as AI services include a wide range of individual service across multiple categories as shown in the following table. So they have different categories in the language, speech, vision, and decision. They have different categories and they have given what kind of different software services they are providing, the APIs which we can use. So we can use AI services to build our own AI solution to provide out of the box solution for modern AI scenarios, and that includes Azure AI document intelligence. We can make an optical character recognition solution that can extract semantic meaning from forms such as invoices, receipts, and others. These kind of document intelligence can be made with the help of Azure. That is, you want to extract information from invoices or receipts or others. It has to be it works with basic principle of semantic relationship. And then Azure AI immersive reader reading solution that supports people of ages and abilities. Azure Cognitive Search, a cloud scale search solution that uses AI services to extract insights from data and documents. And then Azure OpenAI, Azure Open Cognitive Services that provides access to the capabilities of OpenAI GPT-4. This can be used. So while these details of each AI service can vary, the approach to provisioning and consuming them is generally the same. The services are different, but approach to consume them is same. So what we do in this module is we will create a Azure AI Service Resource in our Azure subscription. You should have an Azure subscription. If you do not have, then you can start with a new ID and you have a new debit card. For 1 month, they are giving a free subscription, and you can try for free trials and run Azure AI services and can do this course. Then comes with identify endpoints, keys, and locations required to consume an AI service resource. So once we make a resource and the endpoints are created, and then we should know how we can consume those endpoints and the keys which are provided and the locations in the region in which we are generating it. And then there are two ways to make it. We can either use a REST API to consume an AI service, or we can do the SDK to consume the AI services. Okay, so the next unit is in provision and Azure AI Service Resource. So what we're going to do in this one, this is unit 2 out of 8, that Azure AI Service includes a wide range of AI capabilities that you can use in your applications. And to use any of the AI service, we need to have an appropriate resource in Azure subscription to define an endpoint where the service can be consumed, provide access keys for authenticated access to manage billing for the application's usage of the service. So for every service which we are going to consume, suppose the speech recognition service which we are, where you want to convert your text to voice, and then you want to use that service, then you have to create a resource in Azure, and then endpoint is created and an API is created, and that can be used in your application. So that we're going to see in the next lab which we're going to do. So next is options for Azure resources. What are the options for Azure resources? For many of the available AI services, you can choose between the following provision options. One is multi-service resource, that you can provision an AI service resources that group multiple different AI services. For example, we can create a single resource that enables us to use of Azure AI language, AI vision, AI speech, and other services. This approach enables you to manage a single set of access credentials to consume multiple services at a single endpoint. So for all these services so if we create a multi-service resource, and all the services are combined into one API and one key, and that can be just to do that same process. For if it's a language or it's a vision process or it's a speech process, doesn't matter. If we have created one resource with all these three combined multi-service resource, then you call that API, and then you can use it for your purpose using multi-service resource. And then comes as a single service resource, and then is I think self-explainable, but let's go through it. So each AI service can be provisioned individually. For example, by creating discrete AI language and AI vision resource in your Azure subscription. This approach enables you to separate endpoints for each service and to manage access credentials for each service independently. It also enables you to manage billing separately for each services. So it helps in if you want, because if you think that you'll not be using the same equal amount in all those services will not be used in equal amount, then you can just create single resources and create different endpoints, and then you can manage your billing according to that. You can see that which service is being consumed more and which is causing you more money. And also the single service resource generally offers a free tier with usage restrictions, making them a good choice to try out a service before using it in a production application. So they are also providing free tier for these kind of single resource services, and then it's always beneficial to use them before putting into production application, and then just try out that how it's working and do all that. Then comes as training and prediction resources. While most AI services can be used in a single Azure resource, some offer separate resource for model training and prediction. This enables you to manage billing for training custom models separately from model consumption by application. And in most cases, enables you to use a dedicated service specific resource to train a model, but a generic AI service resource to make a model available to applications for inferencing. So for training and prediction resources, like it's what it's saying is that most AI services can be used as single Azure resource, but some offer a separate source resources for model training, training and prediction. But some does offer separate resources for training purpose and for prediction purpose. This enables us to manage billing for training custom models separately from model consumption by applications, and in most cases enables you to use a dedicated service specific resource to train a model, but a generic AI service resources to make the model available to application for inferencing. Yeah, so we can use it's saying that if you can do actually, so a separate resource can be made for training and prediction, where you can manage the billing of your training custom models separately from the consumption by applications. These two models, when it's created differently, because then you can see your billing cycle basically, and to do a dedicated service specific resource to train a model, but a generic AI service resource to make the model available to applications for inferencing. Okay, then next unit is that we have to identify endpoints and keys. So when we provision Azure AI Service Resource in Azure subscription, you are defining an endpoint through which the service can consume by an application. To consume the service or the endpoint, application require the following information. You need to have, you get the endpoint URL, a subscription key, and the resource of the location. These three things you will be getting and that you will be using. So when we build a resource, then we will see what these three things are and what does it actually refer. Just go into this statements. What does it say? The endpoint URL is an HTTP address which the REST interface for the service can be accessed. Most AI service software development kits, that is SDKs, use the endpoint URL to initiate a connection to the endpoint. So most services, the SDK and REST interface, we can use the HTTP address to call the point, to call the service, and then use them, or we can use a subscription key. Access to the endpoint is restricted based on subscription key. So client application must provide a valid key to consume the service. When you provision an AI service resource, two keys are created. One is application, and use either for application there are two keys are created whenever we are creating a resource. So it is always advised that you use one key as in your production, and you keep the other key to control the access to your resource. You can also regenerate the keys as required to control access to your resource, because when you are giving it to the client, the service which you're providing it to the client, and the keys can be used for that resource. But if your subscription is expiring or some other thing is happening in your production, then you can always use the two keys. You can use one key and keep the other key separate, so that to have the access of that model. So access to the endpoint is restricted based on subscription key. Client application must provide a valid key to consume the service. If client wants to use this, they need to provide the key to consume service. When you provision an AI service resource, two keys are created. Applications can use either key. Any keys can be used by the applications. So we can also regenerate the keys as required to control the access to our resource. Then the resource location, when you provision a resource in Azure, you generally assign it to a location that which determines the Azure data center in which the resource is defined. While most SDKs use the endpoint URL to connect to a service, some require the location. So what it is saying that when you're creating an Azure AI service, then you have to define the location in which you will be using it. That creates a data center in that Azure location, and it is and where the resources define that data center will be used. And while most SDKs, that is software development kits, use the endpoint URL to connect to the service, but some does require location. So most of the SDKs use the URL to connect, this endpoint URL to connect with the service, but some does require the location. Now let's use a REST API. So what is a REST API? So Azure AI Services provide REST application programming interfaces that the client applications can use to consume services. In most cases, service functions can be called by submitting data in JSON format over HTTP request, which may be post, put, or get requests depending on the specific functions being called. The result of the functions are returned to the client as an HTTP response, and often the JSON contents that encapsulates the output data from the function. So what it is saying is that you have this HTTP, and you are sending a request in JSON format, and then you get a response in a JSON format. And there are three main commands which can be used to call the REST API. So Azure AI Service, what it's saying is Azure AI Service provides us REST application programming interfaces that client application can use to consume this service. So client can use this application can client application can use to consume this service. These APIs can be used by the clients to consume these services. And in most cases, service functions can be called by submitting data in JSON format over a HTTP request. In most cases, the service functions can be called by submitting data in JSON format over a HTTP request. So this HTTP request can be sent using post, put, or get. These three commands are for different purposes, and depending on the specific function being called, the result of the functions are returned to the client as an HTTP response, and the results are converted and sent to HTTP response in a JSON format. The JSON format in this JSON format. So the use of REST interfaces with an HTTP endpoint means that any programming language or tool capable of submitting and receiving JSON over HTTP can be used to consume AI services. You can use common programming language such as Microsoft Python, JavaScript, as well as utilities such as Postman and curl, which can be useful for testing. So what it's saying is here that the use of REST interface and HTTP endpoint means that the programming language or tool capable of submitting and receiving JSON over HTTP can be used to consume AI services. What does it say here is that use of REST interfaces with an HTTP endpoint means that any programming language or tool capable of submitting and receiving JSON over HTTP can be used to consume AI services. So since I'm also doing it first time here, so this is part of our learning process. So let's try to understand what this statement is saying, that the use of REST interfaces with HTTP endpoints means that any programming language or tool capable of submitting and receiving JSON over HTTP can be used to consume AI services. So So any programming language or tool which is capable of submitting and receiving JSON over HTTP requests that can be used to consume the AI services is the simple meaning. I think I got confused with the English. So yeah, you can use common programming languages. Microsoft C, Python, and JavaScript can be used because we can send and receive JSON data over HTTPS, and other utilities such as Postman and curl can be used for testing. Then next is SDK. So SDK, we can develop an application that use Azure AI services using REST interfaces, but it's easier to build more complex solution by using native libraries for the programming language in which you are developing the application. So that's what it is advised. So you can have a basic programming language in which you're developing. There are already libraries which are being used, and you can use them, and then you can send a request to the HTTP REST interfaces and then get a response from that. So software development kits for common programming language check the REST interface for most AI services. So SDK availability varies by individual AI services, but for most services there is an SDK for language such as all these languages. Most have the SDKs, and they have software development kits which can be used for the REST interfaces for most AI services which are going to use. So each SDK includes packages that you can install in order to use service-specific libraries in your code. and online documentation to help you determine the appropriate classes, methods, and parameters used to work with the service. Okay, so we are saying that each SDK includes packages that we can install in order to use service-specific libraries in our code and online documentation to help you determine the appropriate class, methods, and parameter used to work with the service. So these languages can be used because they have already software development kits, and when we are calling the REST APIs interfaces for the most AI services, these are the most programming languages which is being used, and you can choose one which you're comfortable in, and then you can go with. I'm comfortable with Python, so I will go with that. So each SDK includes that you can install in order to specific libraries in your code and online documentation to help you determine the appropriate class, method, or parameters used to work within the service. Now comes the main picture that we are going to do the lab. So I'm going to launch this lab. Before you launch this lab, okay, what has taken me to? Yeah, so it's asking me. So what we need to do? Okay, so in this exercise, you will get started with your AI service. So I'll just set up everything in my shell and then I'll see you. Okay, guys. So something has changed here. Initially, it used to give us, uh, open a virtual machine and then we can use to do this. But now I think it has changed because it has changed. So let's do this. So what happens when you click on this launch exercise? This new tab opens, and what we are supposed to do here. So this is the exercise which we have to do, and we have to complete this exercise. I'll just show you here in this full screen. So it shows here that the clone, the repository for this, we have to this steps we have to follow, and this is what we are going to do. So what I want you to do is you go to your portal.azure.com website, and you go to your home page, and then we will follow the steps what it is saying. It's asking that clone the repository for this course in the Cloud Shell. First thing which we need to do is we need to open up our Cloud Shell, open a new browser tab to work with Cloud Shell. If you haven't cloned this repository to the Cloud Shell recently, follow the steps to below to make sure you have the most recent version. Otherwise, open Cloud Shell and navigate to your clone. So we open our Azure portal, and then we need to go to our Cloud Shell. You go to the Cloud Shell. So my Cloud Shell is opening here. So what it says here, if you are opening this for the first time, you may be prompted to choose a type of shell you want to use, Bash or PowerShell. So if you are opening it for the first time, it can ask you what kind of PowerShell you want to open, Bash or PowerShell. So you select Bash from that. And if you don't see this option, skip this step. Like in this my case, it's I can't see the option, and so I'm skipping this step. I'm using some other resources, or it's not in my name. And so if you have to, because I've already consumed mine, so I'm using somebody else right now, a free version. You can do it for yourself also. Then if you're prompted to create a storage for your Cloud Shell, ensure your subscription is specified and select create storage. Then wait a minute or so for the storage to be created. So when you will be prompted to if you are prompted to create storage for your Cloud Shell, they will be, the next section will be asking you create storage. So you ensure your subscription is specified. You are specifying which kind of subscription you're using. So you choose the free one, okay, and then select create storage. Then wait a minute for the and your storage will be created. So make sure the type of shell indicated on the top left of the Cloud Shell pan is switched to Bash. So if you see here, so it can be Bash or PowerShell. So you have to confirm that which you are using. We have to use the Bash one. We are going to use the Bash one. Okay. Then once the terminal starts, enter the following command to download the sample application and save it to the folder. So we can actually copy and paste, but I like to type because it keeps me with practice. So we are going to say rmr labs f, and then we are going to say git clone this https github.com /Microsoft. Make sure you spell everything correctly because there are higher degree of chances to that we can misspell something. It can be caps and all these words. Mislearn dash AI dash services space labs. So it's, if you can see here, it's what it's saying, it's cloning into my lab. So this will happen. It will clone everything, and the files are downloaded to a folder named labs. So we can navigate to that, and we can see the folder. If you see, go to ls, you can see there is labs folder which has been created into my drive here. So the files are downloaded to a folder named labs. Now navigate the lab files websites using this following command. So either you can directly copy this command and go into the Azure AI Services, this #1 section, or what you can do is I just go cd labs. I went into the labs folder. I'm checking the folders which one has inside. We have to go next to lab file. We go to cd lab files. Then the you see the chapters you have. So we are going to go in the first one. So you go to cd01 dash use dash Azure dash AI dash services. So you go into this folder. So if you can see here that came into the folder which we are required to. Now use the following command to open the labs file in the built-in code editor. So whatever files are there, if you can see here, they have files. It has C# and Python, right? So we can what we have to do is it's asking use the following command to open the lab files in the built-in code editor. It has a built-in code editor which we need to open. You code space dot. So it has open here, and I'm going to use with my Python because I'm comfortable with that. Uh, and then let's try to make it big screen. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's much more better. Then we are here now, provision and Azure AI Services Resource. Azure AI services are cloud services that encapsulate artificial intelligence capabilities you can incorporate into your application. You can provide provision application Azure. So the same thing which we have Azure AI Services Resource. We need to create a new resource. So what you're going to do is you're going to go on the portal.azure.com, and you're going to come to this home page. You are here in this home page, and then it asks you Azure, select Azure AI Services. In the search bar, you go here and you type Azure AI Services. So you can see here you have got the option of Azure AI Services. Then you go and create a multi-service account. Create a let's try to keep it down, and we can do one thing more is, you know, yeah, that would be better. So I need to pause for a second because I'm going to log in and I don't want. Okay, everyone. So what we have to do next is we have to go into the Azure AI Services. This is my home page here, and then what you need to do here, I'll just go to my home page here and I'll show you that what we are talking about. So we have to go into this top search bar and search for Azure AI Services and create Azure AI Service multi-service account. So what you can do is just directly type Azure AI Service multi-service account. So if you can see, there are two types of them. One is Azure AI Services and one is Azure AI Services multi-service account. So we go with the multi-service account. I have already created some earlier one, but we are going to create a new one here. So now it says in the top search, we have opened this resource. Create an Azure AI Service multi-service account resource with the following settings. So we are going to create a new one. So this is my subscription. What is my subscription is free trial, and resource group. I'm going to say I've already created the resource, but let's create a new one. Uh, let's say call it Abhishek Training Azure. Yeah, so you need to check if this is available. Yeah, so this is available. We are going to create a new one, and the region which we are selecting, the region is a different region, but I'm going to go with the one which is available here. And then you can name the instance which you are creating here. So choose an available region and enter a unique name. You can say again Abhishek sample name. I'm creating this one, and then pricing type you choose standard 0. So you just acknowledge this, and then pricing, and then you go down and then select the required checkbox which we have already done and create the resource. And you go to review and create and wait for the deployment to complete and then view the deployment details. For now, it's not deploying right now, it is creating. It will open onto this last page and then we will click on create. So you can see here it is deploying. And then after it's deployed, we have to go to the resource to and view its key and endpoints which can be used. So if you see here, it has deployment details. I'll open this into a full screen here for you guys. So what happens here? So let's go to the resource group and okay, something is wrong. Yeah, so let's go to this one is here. We have come into here. Now we have to add the resource. We have not added the resource yet, right? Now go to the resource and view its key and endpoints. This page that contains information that you will need to connect to your resource, use it from an application. So what we need to do here is we have created a multi-service account, but let's create a speech resource. And if I'm creating a speech resource here, I clicked on the speech resource and it has arrived here where it's showing me the key and the location and the endpoint. So what happened here before? So when we were here on this page, so it's giving us these services which I can use, the other services which I can use. Then I choose the speech resource, and in the speech resource, you can go to the manage keys, and then this is the region where it's asking us to show here. These are my keys, and this is my endpoint which has been created. So here you can see an HTTP endpoint to which the client application can send requests, and there are two keys can be used for the authentication. Client application can use either key to authenticate, and the location and the location where the resource is hosted. So this is required for request to some APIs. Now we have to use a REST interface. The Azure AI Services APIs are REST based, so you can consume them by submitting JSON request over HTTP. They are REST based, so we have to send the data into a JSON format over the HTTP. So in this example, we will explore a console application that uses the language REST API to perform language detection. So we have to go into the language API. So if you remember here when we went here, so this is our language service. We're going to language service, and then you click here on manage keys, click here, and then you have this key and application for this one. So or what you can do here is we have already gone into the resource. You can directly go to this, click here to manage keys, and this is the single endpoint and single keys which can be used for my the multi-service account which we have created. So the Azure AI service, we are going to use the language service and the REST API to perform language detection, but the basic principle in this same for all the APIs supported by the Azure AI Service Resource. Okay, so now in your editor, now we have to go to our editor and we go here. So this was our editor. I'll just maximize it. And then what it is asking, expand the C# or Python folder. So I have expanded my Python folder here, and note that it contains a file configuration setting python.env. So Python is having Python is supposed to have, okay, so this is the REST client and this is my .env file here. So then it is asking here, open the configuration file and update the configuration values. So what we have to add here, there are two things which we need to add here. It is asking we have to update these values, AI service endpoint and our AI service key. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go here, I'm going to copy this my service key and go here and select this and paste it here. And then I'm going to go and copy my endpoint and then go here and then go here and paste it here. And then I'm going to save it. And when I save, it is asking for my name. I'm going to rename it as .env itself. So that is saved as .env. Okay, and then so you try to create your own and then use this. Don't try to create mine because I'll be deleting it anyway, so you'll not be able to use it. It will not work for you. We have saved the changes. Now note the REST client folder contains a code file name. Yes. So we have a file name in Python folder rest client.py. So I click on rest client.py. We have this file name here, and it has all the code for this. So it is, let's see this. It's loading the environment, and then it is calling HTTP client base 64 your lib libraries, and then from your lib is calling request pass an error. Then a function is defined to get configuration settings, and it is calling the service endpoint and service key, the environment which we have created. And then it's asking user text. If it is empty, it is creating an empty string. If it is in lower, you quit, otherwise you enter the text, and then there is some code, and then if it is in lower, you do not quit, and you get the language of the text. So this is for that, and then this exception, this is define get language text. Here the function has been defined. There is a JSON body, its document ID and text is there. So let's take a look at the JSON. Let's maximize it, and yeah, so we finished with this one. In this one, it's saying construct the JSON request for document ID and text. Let's take a look at the JSON we will send to the service, and then it's printing this one. And then we are making an HTTP request to REST interface. We are calling this URI, and we are making this connection setup here. And then we are adding the authentication key to the request header. Then this AI key is already being used from this one, AI service key. And use the text analytics language API. So here we are using the text analytics language API, and sending the post request, and we're sending the request, and then it's asking if the call was successful, get the response. So you send, if the response is successful, it gives an code of 200, and then if you're successful, you get the response, and the results are loaded into the JSON format is loaded into the results, and then we are dumping into the indent2, and then we are printing it. Okay. Now let's see what the exercise is saying, what we have to do here. So open the code file name, and for it contains the noting the following details. Various namespaces are important to enable HTTP communication. Okay, I'll just shift myself a little bit up. So various namespaces are important to enable HTTP code. In the main function, retrieve the endpoint and key for your Azure AI Service resource. This will be used to send the REST request which we saw in this code. There will be request to the text analytics service, and the program accepts user input and uses the get language function to call the text analytics. You saw here that we are calling this text analytics function here, and get language function is being called, and to call text analytics language detection to REST API for our Azure AI Service endpoint to detect the language of the text that was entered. So the request sent to the API consists of a JSON object containing the input data, in this case a collection of document objects, each of which has ID and text. So this is what it is talking about, that they have JSON body, and the document is sent into a document format, ID and text. This is sent in this way, and then it's saying that the key for your service is included in the request header to authenticate your client application, that we have already added here, that this is the key service and endpoints which we are using, and that is added in the header. The keys and the application content is added in the header. And so what is saying here, I will just minimize so that we can see the code a little bit clearer. Yeah. So the key service and the response from the service is a JSON object which the client application can pass. So in your terminal, run the following language specific command, and open the REST client folder and run the. So let's run this Python script. What we need to do here is we need to go into the what we have here, ls. We have to go into the Python folder, cd Python. Then you go into the REST client. So we have to go into cd REST client. So I guess we are already here. Yeah, we are in the ls file. Then we have to pip install python -env. So it's going to install the python.env, and then we will be running this Python script which we just saw, this complete code. we will be running here. And yeah, I don't know if you can see here or not, but yeah, I will make it a little clearer. All right. Okay, I can't run this. So basically, we have to run this Python script here. I don't remember the code to clear the screen. Python just type this code here, Python rest client.py. So it is asking us to enter, when prompted, enter some text, review the language that is detected. It is asking us to enter some text, which the return is, for example, try entering hello. So we have to say something like you say, okay, um, bonjour. So what does it say? It's saying it's taking the document, and what it is giving us is telling us the language, that is the French language. So in the other way, you can try something more. You can try hola. Then what is hola? Hola is Tongan. And then what is hola? Hola is Espanol. Yeah, it's Spanish. So this way, this code can be used using the REST interface. Okay, and so you can play with this one, and we have finished till this one, and then let's move to one. I quit already. Yeah. What is the command to clear? Anyways, can you put down in the comment section what is the command to clear? I think I don't remember it. It's in the bash what it is. Anyways, I'm new to all this, so it's exciting for me also, right? So let's go to the SDK version. For what is saying here, we have to use an SDK. So now we're going to go to our SDK. I quickly GPT it that how do you actually clear. So it's basically nothing, just type CLEAR clear, and I was typing something else. I was typing CLR and CLS, which I was trying with Linux commands. But anyways, we have cleared it. We have achieved the goal. Let's try the SDK. So you can write an the code that you can write code that consumes Azure AI Service REST API directly. But there are software development kits which can be used for the programming language like Python and all these 5 languages: Microsoft C, Python Node.js. And using an SDK can greatly simplify development of application that consumes Azure AI Service. It's very easier to consume with these codes. So in the editor, expand the SDK client folder name under the C# Python folder or Python folder. So what we need to do here is we need to go into the SDK client folder. So you press CD space dash dash. So you see why here it's easier for us. Now you see here we have to go into SDK client. Otherwise we would have to type again and all this complete thing. So this we can use here. And so what we do here, we go into the SDK client folder. You will see the SDK dash client, and then to change, so we install the text analytics SDK package by running the appropriate command for your language preference. So we are going to run the Python command here. We are going to, what are the folders here? We have SDK client.py. We are already into the Python client, and we need to install this. So do we need to go into this one, cd space, yeah, we are already in this SDK client file, right? It's asking us to go into SDK client, and we are already into Python SDK client. So we need to just simply install pip install Azure AI text analytics 5.3.0. So we have installed this now. Again, this has come up into big. I'll just quickly clear it. So we are here, and then note that SDK client folder contains a code file name is code file. So we just saw here it has a code file, and we are here, right? So note the SDK client folder contains a code file for the client applicant. See, open the code file and review the code it contains. What we are going to do here is we are going to open this code again, and we are into this folder. We have this SDK client, and so we have this complete code here. So open the code file and review the code it contains, noting the following. details, the namespace for the SDK you install, imported code in the main function. So we have here .env file. Again, we need to give the environment services file name here. So first, what we are going to do here, we are going to go copy our key, go here and paste the key here. Then you go to this, then you paste the endpoint, and then you go here and you paste the endpoint here, and you simply save it, Control S, okay, and then you go to the SDK client.py file, and let's review the code. What it is saying, the things which we need to look after is the namespace for the SDK you installed is imported, and the code in the main function retrieves the endpoint and key of our Azure AI Services resource that will be used with the SDK to create a client for the text analytics services. And then we're calling the get language function, use the SDK to create a client for the service, and then use the client to detect language of the text that was entered. Okay, let's see the code now. Shall we? Yeah. Okay, come on. Uh, Come on. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So we have necessary libraries are imported. We are creating the .env. Then from Azure credentials, we are importing Azure credential, and from the text analytics, we are importing the text analytics client. And then we are calling global AI endpoint and global AI underscore key, which we has been assigned, which has been assigned, which we have, which sorry, we are defining these two variables as global variable, and this is our code. So we are loading the .env file and the AI endpoint. You can see in the get environment, we are calling service endpoint, and then we are calling the service key, and we are assigning it to our variables here. Then you take the user text and you're saying if it's .lower, not quit, and go further, you enter some text. If your text is lower, then you do not quit, and then you get language user text and print the language. This is a get language. This is what we are going to do here, and then from the get language function we are defining here. So credentials, we are calling the credential here. So this is kind of a little strange that we are calling the get language function here upper, but we're defining it below. So we are calling Azure credential AI underscore key, and then text analytics client endpoint credential here, and then call the service to get the detected language client or detect language. You're taking the documents as text, and you're detecting the language, and then you're detected language dot primary language dot name you are going to give as your output. So this is simply very easier as compared to the previous one as we saw. There you're giving completely, we have more control over it or the REST API, but for the SDK client can be used in an easier way. This much better way. So okay, so this is the code which we have seen. Now what it's saying, so it's asking, okay, let's run this file. Okay, we run this file python sdk client.py. So it's again, it's asking some enter some text. I'll say hasta la vista baby. So what does it say? When I say it says it's English, hasta la vista. Hasta, because I typed wrong, I guess, right? Hasta, I'm supposed to say Spanish, yes. So just one spelling mistake, not doing a good job, yeah. Hasta la vista is taking it as English. Strange. Anyways, so this is what the code is about. There's a difference between REST APIs and the SDK client APIs which we can use, and this was a part of our exercise which we are supposed to do. We have done with this exercise. Then next come is our knowledge check. So don't forget to delete all that with the resources which you're creating. Otherwise, after a month when it's not free anymore, you're going to get charged for it. So let's go with it. So how are client applications typically granted access to Azure AI Service endpoint? So the Azure how we are actually granting the how our client applications typically granted access to Azure AI Service endpoint. To the Azure AI Service endpoint, how the client applications are granted access. So the application must specify a valid subscription key for the Azure resource. The users of application must enter a user name and password associated with Azure subscription, or access to Azure services is granted to anonymous users by default. So we saw that we have to, a client has to define the key. He has to give his subscription key, which can be used. So in which format a message exchange between a client and Azure AI Service Resources when using a REST API? So it is between JSON. So if you, any application which can be used using a JSON format over HTTPS, you can send the data and you can get the send the request and you can get a response. So let's check our answers. Perfect. That's correct. So we have finished this module and unlock achievement. We have unlocked a new achievement and we are finished with this module. So now we are finished with two modules, and then the next section will be secure Azure AI services, which we'll be doing in the next video. So I'll see you guys.